So we're going to do my third of 3 reviews on the cross-functional prioritization process, walking one of the actors through it, and now somebody, a lead on the quality team, Vinci. Thanks for doing this with me, Vinci.
Happy to do it. Thank you, Wade, for having me here.
All right. So looks like you wrote lots of notes, so we can talk through your notes, or if you want, you can go on the page, we can talk through the handbook page, etc. What would you prefer?
You could go to the page first, and then the notes that I have taken, we could go along with that. That would be easier for you to
bring up the page and share your screen. I think it's a good way to do it, so I can see it as you talk.
Perfect. Let me share my screen then. Please let me know if you're seeing the right screen once I share. Just give me 1 second.
Having any luck with the screen share?
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Sorry for the delay. I have one too many screens open.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, so we can go through the document. So with respect to cross-functional prioritization, the very first note that I had was, looks to me like this area here might have changed from the last time I looked through this one, a little bit with respect to the breakdown of this. Because when we followed this process 2 weeks ago with the different issues that you created, we have a different guidelines, and that's what we followed for the last time. So this change is a little bit new, but I understand it came from the feedback probably with all the different groups when they went through this process. This change, one feedback I do have is that we did go through this in the middle of a milestone. It was a little bit disruptive for a few groups, especially in my team, because some of them had already planned out for 15.2. And then providing the list of bugs was a little bit disruptive for them. But I'm hoping, since we did this already one time, 15.3 onwards, it might be helpful. It might be much more smoother. But full transparency, 15.2 was a little bit disruptive when we did this. The one feedback or question I do have is, prior to making this change, my understanding was PMs would own features, engineering managers would own maintenance, and quality would own bugs. But with this addition here, PM will be DRI for milestone planning. I'm just not fully aware. What is the difference between what we currently have and what this has been proposed here?
There was a lot of discussion around that, and we landed on it doesn't change. So it is not different than today.
Okay.
Good to call that out there, definitely, because it is confusing.
Yes.
Because we talked a lot about potentially changing that.
Yeah. So then what's different between cross-functional prioritization? Because we also in the past used to provide a list of bugs, maybe not proactively for every single milestone. So is the purpose of having this to have these bugs and maintenance be created on a regular basis, like be prioritised on a regular basis? I'm still not clear on, like with this change, what is really different from current and future state?
Yeah, I think previously the engineering manager, well, the engineering manager was not the DRI on the prioritized list of maintenance issues. The product manager was in consultation with the engineering manager, and similarly on quality. Mm-hmm. Quality lead was not the DRI on the priorities. The product manager was in consultation with quality on that. That's the change. That's one of the big changes. So
the DRI still remain the same, but the ultimate milestone planning would be PMs. That's the difference.
Milestone planning is still with the PMs, yes.
Got it. Okay, so thank you for that clarification. That helps out. The second thing I want to call out here was quality provides type bug. I had a lot of feedback given to this particular area here, like who within quality would be the ones doing it. I know this links takes us to a different page, but at least in the initial phase, while we are rolling this one out, maybe having that DRI specifically called out in this page might be helpful, because a lot of my groups didn't really dig deeper into these links and they were not quite sure.
And like what I did is I went through the stages YAML file, say who's the quality counterpart for each group of the 45 groups, and some don't have them. And yes, some who's listed there is like a software engineer and test, not the manager. So I got it wrong really often based on that data. And you and Tanya and your peers corrected that, which is great. I think we should make this more accurate and succinct. I'm not sure exactly how that's determined though. So actually it'd be great, Vinci, if you put in an MR to update that, or perhaps ask Tanya to. She's the functional lead for the working group overall. So I think it'd be great to have her do that, because I would probably get it wrong if I was going to do it myself.
I think it's pretty clearly defined in here. It's just a matter of going here, way bottom up here. It shows that it's this exact over here. I think it would be helpful to have it in the main page rather than a sub page, so that it's pretty clear and evident for whoever is looking at it. The definition is quite here, yeah, but having it in the main page.
Maybe a summary of that definition here would be great.
Would be great, yes.
So can you either do that in an MR or ask Tanya to?
Yep, I can take that action item.
Cool. Thank you.
The next one here, note UX related work. I'm assuming this is supposed to be a new line item and not part of the bug section. And then it would be helpful to kind of clarify that. Maybe a new line item would be helpful.
Yeah, just formatting, you're saying? Yes, that is.
Yep, just formatting.
I think that was intended for a separate line. That's great feedback.
Awesome. Perfect. Now, with respect to bugs, quality team does have a bug prioritization dashboard that we use. I think it will be helpful to have this one listed here as well, so that teams know what the dashboard is and how to walk through it. Would be helpful as well to kind of list down somewhere here in the note section.
Let me make sure I understand that.
There is a bug prioritization dashboard that we are using to kind of have a view of.
And we have one for each group?
We have a collective one, and I think it will be helpful to have here. And Ty did an amazing job making a video, a walkthrough of that dashboard. I think that would be also helpful to kind of list it here in this handbook page, as the teams would be using that.
Cool. If you could add that as well, or ask Tanya to, that'd be great to add that in.
Will do. I do have a quick question regarding planning for milestone. So there are a few teams who have planned ahead for multiple milestones. How would we want to roll out this process to the team that already have everything planned out?
The UX team had similar feedback. They often plan out multiple milestones ahead. We haven't figured that out yet. We need to. We've got an MVC here, and we need to improve it over time. I know, yeah, we haven't figured that out yet, but we need to.
Okay.
What it might be is some teams use an issue, I know, or issue comments. I've noticed you in particular, you've been putting comments in many issues on the priorities for groups where you're the quality lead for those teams. Some are using a board, an issue board that has one column for maintenance, one column for features, and one column for bugs. And the intent is the quality lead does the bug, drags and drops the quality one, and engineering development manager does maintenance, and product does the features one. That gives you the current state. It's live, which is great. It doesn't say, hey, go look at this. Like, when is this done? It doesn't tell you that. So I did a poll, a survey across quality leads, engineering development managers, and UX leads on how they want to communicate the priorities. And it's mixed. If some want to do an issue, some want to use a board. There's pros and cons of both, and some want to do other things. And there's pros and cons of all approaches. So we're still figuring that out. That's one of my action items for the working group is to take the results of that survey and come up with a recommendation.
Sounds good.
Feedback's great. We need to not just think about this next milestone, but what about
Exactly.
what about when those future ones are planned in advance? How do we handle that?
Yes.
I think the board works better for things that are planned in advance, perhaps, because you prioritize it, not for a milestone, you prioritize it, period.
Across, yeah.
Yeah, so that is a benefit for that.
And that's what we do with bugs too. We have a prioritized list of bugs irrespective of the milestone it is, because based on either severity, missed SLOs, or maybe even customer impacting. And irrespective of the milestone it is, we try to prioritize the bugs holistically and then see what can we pull in for each milestone. So irrespective of milestone, we could potentially do that. Understand what the most critical ones are being taken and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is, I was focusing more on this one. If your team may have ratios other than 60, 30, and 10. So I was working with one of our groups where their primary focus is not features. Their focus might be either mitigating incident issues or some of those natures. So how would we prioritize or kind of break up the workload in such a way that that work is also represented?
There's a pipeline running right now to merge a change to change this text. Where there's discussions over the last couple of days where it was seen as we don't have the data to know if these ratios are good yet. So we're actually taking the ratios out and saying the quad figures out quality, development, PM, and UX figure out what the team, where it should be for the team, rather than having these predetermined ratio guidelines. So the guideline, those numbers are being removed as we speak.
Contradictory to that, I would also argue, historically, unfortunately, if there is a priority challenge, bugs is usually the ones that gets deprioritized because we might have features, something else, and probably also maintenance too. If we remove this breakdown, how do we still ensure that bugs are not getting deprioritized and that we are having some percentage of bugs resolution happening in every group?
Yeah, that's a great question. A development manager might have the same question about maintenance, or UX about a UX change, or a product manager about a feature. That's where the boards don't work as well, because you don't know what was planned in the past versus now versus the future.
Yeah.
That's where an issue, even though an issue is much more manual work for the person to take lists of issues and put them in there. It does give us that to, oh, these things were moved, these things were changed. It's a bigger problem than the one we're trying to solve in the working group, but it's a really important one. And that's where the issues help, where the quality lead could say, for example, hey, I expected 5 things in release X.Y, and we did 2. Why? Like where does that discussion happen? Or let's talk about how to avoid that in the future. If it's just a board, there's no place to have a discussion in a board. I actually have a recommendation in a meeting later today where I'm leaning towards boards based on the feedback. But as you and I discuss it, I'm thinking that's actually, even though it's more work to have an issue, I think an issue is better. So we can have the discussion about it, and we have information at a point in time.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. Yeah, I don't have an answer yet, because I do completely agree. On board, there is no historical value behind the board. There's no way to kind of go back and see what was initially planned, what's being delivered. An issue can be very much maneuvered, especially from a quality counterpart, if I may, because we do not have a DRI for every single group. It becomes really tedious to kind of maintain issues for each and every one of the group and keep an eye out for everything. That is one of the challenges I'm facing right now, where I do have, with just 2 weeks of time frame for us to roll this one out with multiple different groups. I just don't have the time to go back and address the comments that I have getting from the previous discussions I've already had. So it's just a little bit too tedious to do, but hopefully once we are going through this process in a few milestones, it might improve, assuming it will get improved, and that will potentially could help out with the issue. But we definitely need, if we want to roll this one out successfully, we need to have a tracking of what was initially planned and what was finally taken in. Otherwise, it could potentially be going back to square one, where, as I mentioned earlier, we do provide a list of bugs. We do reach out, asking, can this be prioritized in the past? but because of other priorities, it doesn't happen. So how do we ensure that we are just not continuing the same, but calling a different name? That's the key thing that we have to keep in mind. How can we track that what is discussed is actually at least being addressed and delivered towards the end of a milestone?
Makes sense.
I don't have an answer.
I'm so glad
now.
we discussed this because I was about to recommend the opposite. And but now that we're talking through this, I'm going to reverse myself, which is great. Cool. Any other feedback, Vincy?
I think that is all that I have for now. We have not gone through the monthly review within a stage group from an exercise point of view. So it's really hard to tell what is listed here. Is that practical or not? On a high level, this seems right. On a high level, it seems really valid. But once we go through this exercise one time, probably we'll have a better idea at that point. But since we have went to the initial phase of identifying what the bugs would be, working with the PM and EM and listing out, still there is some pushback depending on the capacity. Oh, another question that I did get is some of the teams have a lot of open positions where they do not have enough engineers, or they have a backlog of bugs because the capacity is so low. How do we recommend working with those teams where their capacity is pretty low on these ratios? Do we have a guidance?
In order to how to prioritize when they have a very big backlog, or how to get them more resources so they can go after that backlog, or both?
Actually, both.
Both. In terms of the how to work with the backlog, I think that's actually another good reason to use an issue on the list of priorities rather than a board, because if the column has hundreds of issues in it, the dragging and dropping will be crazy. That won't work.
Yep.
So rather the quality lead, or if it's maintenance, or whatever the lead is for that section, is picking the list that are most important to them for the next milestone. That's key. That's what I'd recommend there. In terms of getting them more, I think that's in terms of getting more time on quality. If it's not where the quality lead believes it should be, I think that's what goes in the issue. It's saying last milestone we did this. I was expecting that. I'd also like more. Here are the reasons why we should allocate more time. That's actually one of the whole points of the cross-functional prioritization process is to create those conversations, the opportunity to have the data and provide the opinions to have those conversations. I think that's not where it ends, but I think that's where it starts.
One feedback I would definitely give is, since we kicked this one off 2 weeks ago, it has definitely increased collaboration between the quad. There's a lot of back and forth conversations happening, really good ones. So that's definitely a good signal that it's improving collaboration between all the quads. So that definitely, I would say, is a big plus.
I have a question for you. Should it be one issue per group that covers both quality and maintenance, quality from the quality lead and maintenance from the development lead? Or should it be two per group, or should it be two a separate one per group?
I would prefer to have one per group, just so that a quality quad, also quality DRI, also knows what is the backlog for maintenance, so that the way, similarly, the EM will also know what's the backlog for bugs. This way they could tell, okay, which should be higher priority. Should bugs for this particular group be higher priority, or maintenance? If those goes to be two separate issues, they might not be proper visibility. Of course, you can tag the other, but with too many different issues, it will be hard. Having it together in one place would give that kind of.
You won't have the context across. I think that does make sense. And then also, that one issue, we can make it the process to tag the quad, tag the quality lead, the development lead, the UX lead, and the product manager. Anybody else of interest, but then they can be part of it. They can be sure to be at least informed. Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks, Vincy. Yeah. This is great feedback.
Yes, definitely. And they also gives the opportunity of saying, can we take off one maintenance and add one bug? Or like we could prioritize between those two categories instead of just within the same category. That will also help out.
Good stuff. Yeah. Anything else, Vincy? Any other feedback?
I think one last thing that I would say is the prioritization framework that might not be very much helpful or like very informative for someone, especially for an IC looking at it. So maybe a little bit more color to this one would be helpful. Like, what does priority one security fixes truly mean? that would potentially help out the broader engineering team in itself.
Somebody else who I did one of these reviews with, I can't remember if it was development or UX, had similar feedback.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one other thing that I had was regarding weights. Since right now I'm giving the number of bugs to a product group, some comes back and me says, out of the 2 bugs you gave, out of the 5 bugs you gave, 2 are really critical, complex ones. It will take more time for us to resolve than the other ones. So we might not be able to finish up all the 5 bugs in one milestone. So the question was, can we look into weights? I think this feedback, I saw this somewhere else too. Maybe it was in the working group channel, I'm not sure. Can we measure weights over number of bugs and issues?
We have considered feedbacks come in a couple different times of all types of issues, not just bugs. And we decided not to in this iteration, but I think we're going to likely consider that in the future. It is not the most common feedback, but it is amongst the most common feedback that we'd like. It's not issues or issue weights. It's probably both, as we probably want a dashboard showing both. Do all teams do weights of all types? I know most of the time most teams do, but I don't know if, I believe that's the case, but I'm not actually sure.
I believe for bugs also they assign weights. I would say so.
Great. We wouldn't want those we'd want the data to be accurate if we're going to do a dashboard on it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Great.
But I would still say that each team might have separate different weights for different type of, like, for example, a bug might be a weight 3 for one team, but there's a different team would assume that bug is a weight 5. So definition of the weight would be critical if you want to have a dashboard based on weights.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. It might average out over time, across multiple sections or the whole company, and it would still be accurate per group, but you can't compare one group with another because the weights might mean different things across groups. So it still might be directionally accurate. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Not only do all teams need to be doing weights if we're going to use weights, but we would need to keep in mind that not all teams use weights use them in the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as we acknowledge that and keep that in mind.
I think that's all I had for today.
Thanks, Vinci.
Thank you.